The Saffron combat laser was tested during the Zapad 2025 exercises held in Belarus. In addition, Russia once again took the opportunity to frighten the world with its nuclear weapons. Let's take a closer look at these topics in our next segment.
On the last day of the Zapad 2025 exercises, the Russians and Belarusians decided to impress the world with their wonder weapon called Saffron. Propaganda media outlets spread the news online that at the Borisovsky training ground, north of Minsk, a combat laser was tested, a mobile system capable of destroying small UAVs at a distance of 1 kilometer. All that is known about it are the parameters announced by the presenter. Target engagement time of less than 10 seconds and a crew of 3 people. Back in the summer of 2024, Russians reported that Russia and Belarus had prepared a new combat laser for testing. The Belarusians even produced a report from the LEMT Scientific and Technical Center, which has been developing laser technologies since 2023. The designers called their creation the Hyperboloid and showed the first assembled prototype.
The system, created at a Belarusian enterprise, can operate in conjunction with various radar systems. The Belarusian system is installed in special containers. The laser is deployed on a platform directly at the moment of use and operates in a pulsed mode. This means that the energy flash can only be seen during the active engagement of a target. In addition, the entire complex can be installed not only in special facilities or underground for camouflage purposes, but also mounted on mobile platforms.
In May of this year, a Belarusian public page that publishes information on military-related topics posted these 2 photos. In one, there is a falling drone, in the other, the so-called combat laser Shapran. From this, analysts concluded that the system had been tested. And now they have announced it during large-scale exercises that the so-called allied states are conducting near the borders of NATO countries. Ukrainian analysts have already criticized this show. They say the Russians were flaunting a prototype in front of observers and participants from other countries. Moreover, as with other so-called unparalleled projects, this weapon is most likely a repackaged Chinese solution known as the Silent Hunter. The most interesting part is that earlier the Russians did the same thing based on it, only under the name Kochevnik.
At the same time, the most interesting thing is that the Russians themselves admit the laser system shown in the photo is actually a Chinese development called the Low Altitude Laser Defense System, or LALU. The name Silent Hunter also appears online. This is an improved version of the LALU system with a power output of up to 30 kilowatts, available in both stationary and mobile versions, and most likely developed by the Chinese Academy of Engineering Physics.
Recently, at Zapad 2025, the Kvadrat was spotted. This is a Russian terminal that is positioned in Moscow as an analog to Starlink. This equipment was used to provide communications for units and elements of the regional troop grouping. There is no information about it in open sources, but visually it resembles the American system. It is known that Kvadrat is designed to transmit large volumes of data at the regimental or divisional level, with the capability to use various communication systems, secure email and video conferencing. In addition to Kvadrat, terminals called Sprint were also used during the exercises. Information about them only became available recently at the end of June, when Russian media reported on deliveries to the 20th Combined Arms Army of the Western Grouping. And of course, besides the new equipment for the finale of the exercises, the Russians and Belarusians reserved maneuvers involving the notorious Oreshnik.
Among the most significant events are activities such as planning and reviewing the use of non-strategic nuclear weapons, as well as the assessment and deployment of the Oreshnik mobile missile complex. Our Russian colleagues have shared their combat experience with us, which allows us to say that our units are now receiving the most up-to-date, most advanced information, which they are mechanically and automatically integrating into their combat operations.
The Zapad 2025 exercises turned out to be larger in scale than analysts had expected. The armies of Belarus and Russia carried out several maneuvers at once and showcased their developments. After several years of being an information outcast, Minsk hosted dozens of foreign journalists and delegates. The dictator's armies enjoyed rattling their sabers so much that they promised to do it again in 2 years.
A swarm of Russian drones in the sky over Poland. Several dozen combat drones briefly violated the airspace of a NATO country, which led to destruction. How did NATO respond, or how will it respond, and will there be a major war between Russia and the alliance? Let's watch.
Oh my goodness gracious.
This is the beginning of World War III. NATO countries have never seen an attack like this before. Or is it just a provocation? Reactions to the Russian drone attack on Polish territory on the night of September 10th vary drastically. However, the fact remains, Russia has openly attacked a NATO country with strike drones for the first time. According to Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, a total of 19 Shahed-type drones entered their territory. Only 4 of them were reportedly shot down in advance. The rest were likely suppressed by electronic warfare systems. At the same time, it is known that one of the drones managed to fly about 300 kilometers across Poland. However, the official report states that all targets were destroyed, and this was achieved through the efforts of almost the entire eastern flank of NATO's air forces, up to and including a radar reconnaissance aircraft.
The Polish side claims that they shot down everything, and moreover, even tanker aircraft were deployed, for example, from NATO bases in Italy, to refuel the fighters in Polish airspace that were involved in repelling the drone attack.
At the same time, the raid did not go unnoticed by civilians. The remains of the downed drone destroyed a residential building. There were also reports of UAVs crashing right in the middle of the streets. In addition to all this, thousands of people were unable to depart from Polish airports.
Operations at 4 airports were suspended. That is, the main hub in Warsaw is Shapran Airport, and Warsaw-Modlin was also affected, as well as Rzeszów-Jasionka. Actually, Rzeszów is the closest airfield to Ukraine, and Lublin.
But even more shocking than the very fact of the attack on NATO is the reaction that followed from the alliance members and from Poland itself. So in the country that essentially became the target of an attack by 24 strike drones, this raid was called a provocation, citing the absence of casualties.
Most likely we are dealing with a large-scale provocation, but at the same time, we are consulting with our allies. I am in constant contact with the NATO Secretary General. This is the first time that Russian drones have been shot down over the territory of a NATO country, and that is why all our allies are taking this situation very seriously. We have not recorded any casualties. Of course, the search for the downed drones is ongoing.
NATO leadership has also expressed deep concern. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte stated, "The North Atlantic Alliance will defend every inch of its territory. However, a full assessment of the incident is still ongoing. The United States, with whom consultations began immediately after the drones crossed the border, have so far chosen not to comment publicly at all." Mr. President, what about the Russian drones that entered Polish territory? Belarus, on the other hand, did not remain silent. Despite the fact that most of the drones entered Poland from there, the local Minister of Defense, with a straight face, declared, "If it weren't for us, Warsaw wouldn't have had time to react at all. So you should actually thank us for warning you."
Through the available channels of interaction from 11 p.m. on September 9th to 4 a.m. on September 10th, our on-duty forces and resources exchanged information about the aerial radar situation with the on-duty forces and resources of Poland and the Republic of Lithuania, thereby notifying them about the approach of unidentified flying objects to their country's territories. This allowed the Polish side to respond promptly to the actions of the drones by scrambling their on-duty forces.
However, the main question arises, what was this all about? According to analysts, with such an attack, the Russian Federation was trying to achieve several objectives at once. First, to show Europe what war is really like, and that it is much closer than they think. Second, to test how NATO would respond to a possible incursion, particularly in the Suwałki corridor area.
Accordingly, in this case, it's a measurement of the possible reaction and an assessment from a military potential standpoint to see how the adversary operates. Especially since the Zapad 2025 exercises are about to begin in Belarus, and especially since there are Russian troops and the Russian Federation, among other things, has, if you can put it this way, access to this Belarusian data.
Also, a drone attack on Poland is meant to make Europe less eager to defend Ukraine's interests in the upcoming negotiations. After all, it is the Europeans today who are resisting the idea of the US and Russia imposing the notion of unconditional concessions on official Kyiv. Moreover, analysts believe that if the plan doesn't work, it could be repeated.
It's no coincidence that on the Karelian Peninsula, the Russians are now building the corresponding military infrastructure, which will directly threaten Finland, a member of the North Atlantic Alliance. It's no coincidence that right now a series of exercises is taking place on the territory of the Republic of Belarus. Undoubtedly, all these preparations, all these military maneuvers are primarily aimed at practicing certain actions that in the future will be directed either against the Baltic countries or once again against Poland. Therefore, without a doubt, an escalation is indeed taking place.
It seems that NATO also understands the growing risks. That is why, alongside rather sluggish rhetoric, they have nevertheless decided to urgently call up Polish reservists and strengthen the air defense in the east of the country.
The European Union has already announced that it will allocate additional funds for Poland to purchase ground-based air defense systems, specifically designed to counter drones. We're talking about artillery systems, electronic warfare equipment, and so on.
Ukraine, for its part, has once again stated if the aggressor is not restrained, the escalation will continue to grow. That is why pressure on Moscow needs to be increased. President Zelensky also promised, if necessary, to help Poland set up a public alert system and to share effective methods for countering Russian drones and missiles.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.